Senator Marcos's camp is eternally vigilant. I'm sure the other camps are also vigilant as well to make sure that nothing untoward happens during the canvassing process. So let me ask a few questions regarding some of the points that Senator Marcos had raised. Mr. President, you talked about the changes in the transparency server. And to be frank, that was very troublesome, I think, for all of us when we found out that the transparency server was changed right there and then. In fact, I think COMELEC castigated Smartmatic for having done that. But Mr. President, I'd like to clarify that this was done to the transparency server. Are you alleging that this was also done to the two other servers with an independent mechanism compared to the transparency server, Mr. President?
It is precisely why I have requested and have yet to receive any comment, answer, or even acknowledgement of that request to look into the COMELEC server and to have my IT experts look into the COMELEC server to see if this manipulation, interference, changes had been done. So unfortunately, those requests have fallen on deaf ears thus far.
So in short, Mr. President, your call for a full audit is to find out if there were any irregularities in the two other servers.
Well, amongst other things, yes.
So in short, Mr. President, currently, we only know that the transparency server was modified. And of course, the story was because of the cosmetic change. But you want to check if there were also changes in the two other servers.
Well, we would also like to check whatever happened, as I think has been explained in the various media. The fact that you have entered or you changed, the values of the hash code have changed simply indicates that the file was entered into. How many times it was entered into, what was done while the file was open, and the operator was in the file and changing different parts of it, we cannot tell. And that's why this assurance that we are being given, that it was merely a cosmetic change, simply has no proof behind it, merely the assurances. But I think it is unanimous thus far, that so long as the file has been open and remains open, which it did, it remained open until until about 8 o'clock on May 8 a.m. on May 10th, at which point when this was brought up, it was later in the day on May 10th, until it was brought up by some of the watchers, and another Venezuelan operative of Smartmatic says, "I'll fix it," and basically locked the file open, and thereby leaving it open for anyone to come. So whatever changes were made over and above the so-called Kanya change, then we cannot tell. That is why we have asked to look at the audit logs, we have asked to look at the transmission logs, we have asked to look at the receiving logs, we have asked to look at all of the records so that we can be sure that the different values have remained consistent all throughout.
On that note, Mr. President, I think parties have come on record, even Congresswoman Robredo, to say that we are open to a full audit, and to open up.
Unfortunately, those parties will not be the ones to decide whether or not we can go in and have a look at the servers. It is only the COMELEC who can give that authority.
That's true, Mr. President. I just wanted to state that for the record. But going back to the question on the transparency server, I take it, Mr. President, you don't accept the COMELEC's their explanation of what had happened. They had come out very strongly to say that this was merely a cosmetic change.
Well, I can stand here and say many things, Mr. President, but I have to back it up with data, with proof, with evidence of that, and they have not done that.
Thank you, Mr. President. So you're saying it yourself that any accusation must be backed up with the proper data, with the proper numbers. And currently, Mr. President, right now, your assertions on the transparency server Is there any data, or you are merely
Oh,
calling
yes.
for
Oh,
you are
yes.
merely
No,
calling
no, no,
for
no, no.
opening up of the server for scrutiny, Mr.
There are-
President?
No, quite the contrary, Mr. President. We wouldn't have bothered asking all of these authorizations to go in had we not spotted many discrepancies that need to be clarified. This is not a fishing expedition. It is something that is clearly in aid of clarifying the irregularities that were clearly seen and admitted to by both COMELEC and Smartmatic.
Mr. President, are you referring to the Enya problem, or are you referring to the so-called trend that you were mentioning earlier? What irregularity in particular are you exactly talking about?
Again, there are many, too many, I think, for us to go through here. We have, as I said when I spoke, that I will, at the proper time and the proper place, will detail those irregularities, those discrepancies that we have found. And furthermore, to back those up, will be reports, will be analyses, will be affidavits, statements from witnesses, and I think and many whistleblowers as well who have come forward and have decided to come clean about their part in all of this.
So, Mr. President, you're saying that you have evidence and data, but you don't wish to say it today.
Exactly. I do not think that in an interpolation on the plenary floor is the place to do it. I think that when the canvassing starts, these will be detailed to the canvassing board when we have begun.
Well, Mr. President, one thing that you mentioned earlier was about the change in the trend. No? You talked about, I think, around 8 p.m. when when the trend started to go against you and for Congresswoman Robredo. And I'd just like to mention, Mr. President, for the record, that numerous academicians have actually said that there is nothing irregular about that. And in fact, Mr. President...
And for that matter, Mr. President, numerous academicians have said that there is. So it is not, that is...
Two, Mr. President, you have two academicians who actually said that there were irregularities.
Ano ba to? Paramihan na academician o naghahanap tayo ng katotohanan?
Mr. President, if I may finish my question. And in that course, Mr. President, a number of academicians have said that the likelihood for the simplest answer is true. That in the first few hours, the votes came from NCR, Region 1, Region 2, and of course, Mr. President, you won handily in many of these areas. And at around the time that you had mentioned, these are when votes that came from other areas from the Philippines, where Congresswoman Robredo won, started to come in. Mr. President, a lot of, if you look at where these votes came from, the explanation is not as fantastic as maybe a hash code change or a hacking that had happened. But there are records, Mr. President, and I join you in asking COMELEC to open up these records to show where exactly these votes had come from.
At the proper time, Mr. President, I will show that that trend did not depend on the early returns of votes that came from regions 1, 2, 3, or wherever I am perceived to have been strong. The transmittal of votes, you have to separate the two, the official COC from the provincial canvasser and the transmitted votes from the precincts. As you know, the precinct votes were transmitted immediately upon closure of the precinct. And the COCs were only transmitted upon completion of the provincial canvass. So if we were to look at the actual precincts that had reported, that had transmitted results, then that contention that it is only from regions 1, 2, and 3 that came in first is simply not true. Perhaps the first that came in were from those areas, but in small percentages. So that if you look at the percentages of votes that had actually come in from different places, it was fairly even.
Mr. President, on another note, we talked about the unfortunate change that Smartmatic did.
Unfortunate, Mr. President? I think I would characterize it as rather more than unfortunate. It is illegal.
Yes, Mr. President, and I think COMELEC itself has already castigated Smartmatic for that.
Castigating Smartmatic does not remedy the situation. How was it allowed to happen? How was it allowed that the password of the COMELEC was used by a Smartmatic staff operative employee was allowed to use the COMELEC password to make that change without an end bank resolution authorizing such a change? That is a question that, as to this day, we have yet to find an answer.
And we join you, Mr. President, in trying to find out
Thank
the
you.
answers to these queries. Mr. President, what I would like to ask is that if you are averring that these changes affected the elections, are you also saying that it only affected the vice
I
presidential
do not
race?
know what happened. Exactly. This is the whole point. We do not know what happened when Marlon Garcia opened the file and changed the so-called ENIA. What else did he change? Did he change more? Did he change nothing? Did he change my name? Did he change the numbers? What did he do? What else did he do? And after he had done whatever it is he had to do, what else did anyone ask this since the file was then open? What else did anyone go in and change afterwards? And after the file was locked open, that was by putting the first hash code after the second hash code, thereby essentially locking it open. Who else went into that file and made alterations? We don't know. That is the whole point of what we are trying to talk about. What happened? What is it? If we can be shown that the changes were indeed cosmetic, you will never hear about this from me again. But
Mr. President.
we still have to determine whether or not anything else was changed, what changes were made, who made them, and under whose authority.
And more importantly, Mr. President, who should be penalized for that? I think you will agree with me on that, no, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, I'm sure that is part of the question, but I think more to the point is so that we need to find out exactly what happened. We have to be sure that the conduct of the elections were in fact fair and honest and transparent. That is to this point not the case, simply because we have not received any answers from COMELEC on the questions that we have raised to them. And we also have not received any authorization to inspect the servers and the logs as we have asked the COMELEC.
Mr. President, just a final question. Mr. President, kung kayo na po mismo nagsabi na hindi ho natin alam kung meron ngang nangyari, hindi ho ba premature na sabihin na may pandarayang nangyayari? Kayo na po mismo nagsabi, hindi natin alam kung ano yung nangyari.
Wala pa akong sinasabi na may pandarayang nangyari sa pagpalit ng server. Ang sinasabi kong pandaraya, ang yung mga picture, yung mga video na nakita natin na sa ibang lugar, hindi pinabaya maboto. Meron akong mga video na siguro nakita naman ng lahat ng tao, mga bago mag-rally na nagbibigayan ng pera, ng vote buying, etc. etc. Lahat yan. Pandaraya lahat yan. Kaya maliwanag dahil meron nga kaming ebidensya na may pandaraya. Ngayon, kung yung pandarayang yan ay doon lamang sa vote buying, doon lamang sa intimidation, doon lamang sa hindi pinayagan bumoto ang ibang botante, kung hindi, doon pati sa transparency server, doon pa rin sa system log, sa audit log, ay ibang usapan niya. Dahil wholesale na yan. Kaya't yan ang aming gustong makita. Kaya't yan ang aming hinahanap at humihingi kami ng authorization galing sa COMELEC na tignan para malaman. Siguro naman ako na mauuna na matutuwa kapag malaman ko na hindi nagka-problema.
Tama, Mr. President.
Ako na ang unang-unang magsasabi, mas gumana ang aking loob dahil alam ko na ang nangyari. Ang problema, hindi na ipapaliwanag ng mabuti ng COMELEC at hindi tayo pinababayaan na tignan ng mabuti para iliwanag ng mabuti kung ano ba talaga ang nangyari sa loob ng mga servers, sa loob ng ating mga transmission, sa loob ng ating mga vote counting machine.
Mr. President, kung ikaw na po yung unang gagaan ang loob, ako na po yung pangalawang gagaan ng loob kapag naibukas na po ang lahat ng iyan. And I would like to thank the gentleman for answering my questions. And I know it's a very trying time for him and his family. And thank you for answering my questions, Mr. President. But for the record, I'd also like to reiterate what the good gentleman from Ilocos Norte had said, which is, pagdating sa transparency server, wala pa talagang masasabing dayaan dahil hindi pa nga ito nalalaman. Thank you very much for that, Mr. President. Mr. President, thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you, Senator Mark.
Thank you.
The session is suspended. Nasa record.
And that was the interpellation of Senator Bam Aquino to Senator Bongbong Marcos, who delivered a privileged speech. Aquino questioned some points on Senator Marcos's statements as the vice presidential bet called for a full audit of PUMALAG's servers. In his speech, Marcos said netizens were able to capture footage of cheating and vote buying has been rampant, as well as threats and intimidation. He also asked why the PUMALAG is turning a blind eye on evidence of poll fraud that have come out. Marcos asserts he raises these questions for the millions of Filipinos who voted for him, adding eternal vigilance is the price of liberty.